Okay, so now moving on to our next video, which is Unit 3K, and this is going to be our coordinate plane. All right, and our learning objectives for today and what we want to be able to understand is, first off, what is a coordinate plane? We want to know how to write a point that is graphed on a coordinate plane. So that means that we will be given a point that is graphed for us, and then we want to write what it is. Then we'll also want to know how to plot a point. So not only will we have to be able to read a coordinate plane and say, well, what does that point equal? But you'll also have to be able to take a point and then graph it on a coordinate plane. And then you'll have to know how to reflect points on a coordinate plane, both horizontally and vertically, or along our x and our y axis. All right, so before we get into anything with the coordinate plane, we are going to go ahead and discuss what a coordinate plane is. So we have already learned how to graph along a horizontal number line where we have 0, and as we move to the right, we know that we are increasing with value. As we move to the left, we are decreasing with value. And we've also learned how to graph a vertical number line, where when we have 0, as we move down, we have a decreasing value, and as we move up, we have an increasing value. So we have learned how to do these separate. Well, what a coordinate plane is it's taking our horizontal number line and our vertical number line, and then we're creating one graph with a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. So this is what our coordinate plane looks like. Now, nothing changes, whereas the only thing that you do need to know is where these two graphs intersect. Now, there's a lot of things you need to know, but the first thing is where these two graphs intersect, this is going to be considered our 0 value. So our rule still applies. As we move to the right of our 0, we are increasing. As we move to the left of our 0, we are decreasing. As we move up from our 0, we are increasing. And as we move down from our 0, we are decreasing. Right, so those rules still apply. But the problem is now we can't just say, okay, graph 4, because, well, which direction are we moving? Are we moving horizontally or are we moving vertically? So now, since there are multiple directions that we can move, because we can move left and right, and now we can move up and down, we need to actually be given two numbers and what's called a coordinate. So we are given two numbers, and let's say 5, 2. Right? So that is telling us the coordinate that we are moving. The first one that we do is telling us how we are moving horizontally. So that means that in this 5, 2, we are moving horizontally in a positive 5 direction. So that means we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that my first point is somewhere along this line where my horizontal value is equal to 5. And then the next value here, we are going to graph that vertically. So this tells me how I'm moving up or down. So it says positive 2. Let me graph this in a blue value. All right, so that means we're moving up 1, 2. So that means at this point, 5, 2 is here, where we are 5 along the horizontal axis and 2 along the vertical axis. We don't write horizontal and vertical out like that, though. We label these x, y. So our horizontal axis is referred to as our x-axis, and our vertical axis is referred to as our y-axis. All right, we're going to go through this in more detail, but just a quick, brief overview of how this works. So since we can move in multiple directions, we need to have multiple numbers. And the first number tells us how we're moving horizontally, or now we know it's referred to as our x value. And our second number is telling us how we're moving vertically, or now we know it's referred to as our y value. All right, we're going to look at one more little picture, which is then going to name some of these regions and go over this again. And then we're going to do some problems together. All right, so a coordinate plane is formed by the intersection of a horizontal number line and a vertical number line, just like we talked about. The number lines intersect at the origin. So remember I told you that this is where they intersect is 0. That's referred to as our origin. And it's the point 0, 0, meaning it's 0 for our horizontal axis and 0 for our vertical axis, or 0 for our x and 0 for our y. All right, but it's our origin, and it is the point 0, 0. And it separates the coordinate into 4 regions called quadrants. Right, so we start. It's kind of it might be It might not be something that you might think is the way that we count, but we start in the first top right region, and then we actually count counterclockwise. So it's quadrant 1, then quadrant 2, then quadrant 3, then quadrant 4. So we actually go in reverse clockwise. So we will start in our top right region, and we go around. All right, and remember, an order pair is used to locate a point in the coordinate plane. So if they give me the point 4, -2, remember, the first point refers to our x-coordinate or our horizontal number line, and then the second point is our y-coordinate or our vertical number line. And if we were to plot this, well, I know that my x point or my horizontal is moving 4 in a positive direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know that my first value is going to plot it somewhere along this point where my horizontal or x value is equal to a +4. Right? Then my y value is -2, so I know I'm moving down 1, 2. So I know that my point is also going to be along this line. Right? So my point will be here, where my horizontal x value is at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and my y value or my vertical is at -2, and I can count down to that -2. All right, so we're going to go through some examples now where we're plotting points and we're also reading the graph. And then if you need any help with this, we have plenty of time to go over in class. All right, so here is a coordinate plane with some points. Now, whenever we plot our points, we do label them by a letter. Now, I didn't do that in the last one because it didn't give us any letter to label them by, but we will label them as a capital letter. All right, so here's a bunch of points. We have point P, we have point Q, point S, point R, and point T. It says which order pair corresponds to point T. So first thing I'm going to do is highlight our point T. So here's our point T. Now remember, we know it's going to go our horizontal line first, then our vertical line second, or we refer to this as our X and Y. All right, you are going to hearing me stop referring to it like this, but just for the time being, since we're getting used to it, I will still say that, but it is our X and our Y axis. So the first one we're going to do is count how far we've moved along our X axis. So we have moved 1, 2, 3 units in our X axis, and we've moved 3 units to the right. So that means it is a +3. And then from here to get to this point, now I'm going to see how many I moved vertically. Well, I moved 1, 2, 3 units down. And when we go down, we know that we're moving in a negative direction. So that means we moved -3. And we always start from the origin, right? We always need to start from this origin of 0, 0 when we're doing this. So that way we know that we're starting at the correct point. Because if I start at this -5, 0, or -4, 0, it's going to change my value, but I just randomly picked that. All right, we always start from this origin where the two lines intersect, because that is our point. 0, 0. So it's telling me how many I'm moving up and down in each direction, and I know that that is valid for my actual final answer. So then the order pair that refers to this is our C, 3, -3. All right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to just go through and we're going to label what each of these other letters are. Let me erase this. And we're going to label what each of these other points are, right? Just so that way we can practice. So from here, our point P, we know that we moved 1, 2, 3 in the left direction. So since we moved left, we know that that is negative. So that'll be -3. And then we moved up 1, 2, 3. So up is positive. So P is -3, 3. It's very close to what T was. It's actually just reversed, right? I'm going to do Q in red. So in Q, we moved 1, 2 to the left. So that means it's -2. And we didn't move anywhere up or down. We stayed on that axis. So that means that my value for that is 0 because we never moved up or down. So it's at 0. All right, then I would do blue for S. So it's 1, 2. We moved up. We don't move anywhere left or right. So it is equal here. We're not moving anywhere left or right. So if we don't move anywhere left or right for this, then that means it is 0. And now we're moving up 1, 2. So this is now we're moving up 2. You guys are going to learn in the future some very specific names. This here is actually called our x-intercept. It's where we're crossing our x-axis. And this is actually referred to as our y-intercept. And that is where we're intersecting or crossing our y-axis. Right? And then the last one, R, I will do in black. So R, we move left 1, so that means it's -1. And then we're moving down 1, 2, 3, 4, so that means it is -4. So R has points of -1, -4. All right, so we went through how to read them, but now we also need to make sure that we can plot them. All right, I'm going to label this letter A, and I will label this letter B. So for letter A, it's asking us to plot the points -2, 3. So we start from our origin, or 0, 0. It's telling me I'm moving along my x-axis in -2. So that means this first point is going to be 1 somewhere along this line. Now, you don't have to draw this dotted line. I'm just showing you where it's going to be because I know I'm moving 2 in my negative direction along my x-axis. And then it's telling me I'm going up 3. So it means I'm going 1, 2, 3. So here is my point, and I will label this as A. All right, for B, we're asked to plot the point 0, -3.5. So this one, along our x-axis, we're not moving anywhere left or right. So I know it's actually going to fall right along this point, right? Because we haven't moved anywhere left or right. And now it's telling me I'm going down 3.5, so 3.5. So this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be 3. So now, since they're not counting in halves here, I just need to approximate this. So I'll put my point somewhere in between 3 and 4, and I will label this B. All right, so now we're going to talk about what it means to reflect. So we're reflecting a point in the coordinate plane. So to reflect a point in the x-axis, you use the same x-coordinate and you take the opposite of the y-coordinate, meaning that we're going to make it negative. So that means when we're reflecting around the x-axis, it will be x, -y. All right, and what it means to reflect, it just means that it is going to be the same image, but flipped over that axis, and it means that each point is the same distance away from that axis. All right, so if we're reflecting, sorry, let me just minimize that. So if we're reflecting along the x-axis, that means that we're trying to reflect along this line. So if I give you the point of 1, 2, well, if we go to plot this point, and I want to reflect this, it needs to be the same distance away from that x line in the other direction. So that's why our x value doesn't change, but our y value does. It will then become the point of 1, -2. Because when we're reflecting along the x-axis, if I change the x value, it wouldn't be the exact same image, if you want to say that. It's just a point. But it wouldn't be the exact same thing because we're now moving it in different directions. Right? If we are to reflect along the y-axis, we use the same y-coordinate, but take the opposite of the x. So that means our reflected value will be -x, y. So if I plot the point of, let's say, 3, 2, so this will then be 1, 2, 3, 2. Here is my point. If I want to reflect it along this y-axis, well, it needs to be the same image, mirror image, and I just need to then make sure this is the same distance away. So this is 1, 2, 3 units away here. So I need to move 1, 2, 3 units away here as well, and then we will plot the point at -3, 2. All right. So when we're reflecting, you see, what are we reflecting about? Are we reflecting about the x-axis? Well, then our x value does not change. Are we reflecting around the y-axis? Well, then our y value does not change. And whatever the other coordinate is, we just simply take the opposite of it. All right, we're down to our last 2 examples that we're going to do, and then that is it. So it says reflect -2, 4 along the x-axis. So that means that we're reflecting along this line here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot it. Well, -2, 4, so it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when we're plotting around the x-axis, remember, our x value does not change, so that means we're taking the opposite of our y value. So if our point was -2, 4, I don't know why this isn't writing right now. All right, it's messing up right now, so this might be the last example. We might have to cover the last one in class. If you see, as I move up and down, it's showing still. So if we're trying to write -2, 4 as reflected, then that means it will be -2, -4, because we're taking the opposite of our y. It needs to be the same distance away, so that means we need to move 4 in the opposite direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So our point will be here at -2, -4. All right, now, the last example that I was going to do is not only going to have you do it in the x-axis, but then it was going to say, now, after you do this, then reflect sorry about this, it's just acting up, along the y. So after we did that, then we were going to say, well, let's reflect this along our y-axis. So here's our y-axis. So now we wanted to make sure, remember, when we're doing our y, our x value is what we take the opposite of, and our y value remains the same. So in this case, we would take the opposite of -2, we know is +2, and our y value remains the same, so it is -4. So then from here, it's 2 units away from our y-axis, so it needs to be 2 units away from our y-axis in the other direction as well. All right, so sometimes you might be asked this to reflect one at a time, sometimes you might be asked to reflect multiple at a time. All right, that is it for this video.